Welcome to Fierce Female Filmmakers, a production of Artemisia's Daughters. My guests today are Karla Williams and Rebecca Coley, two fierce female filmmakers who co-founded the award-winning film production company MsMono. Their website says, and I quote, "We tell original female-centered stories and strive to increase female representation in the film and TV industry. We are a small company with big ambitions." Karla and Rebecca, welcome.
Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and talking with me today, because I know when I meet another woman who's a director or a screenwriter or a producer or all three, because that seems to be what we have to do to get our work made, I always want to know how it started and where it came from. Karla, would you kick off and just tell us a little bit about your background and why you're sitting here today?
Sure. So where did it all begin? So I guess the best place to start is when I met Rebecca. So I met Rebecca back in 2012. So we were introduced by an actress that I was working with on a theatre project. And the actress had the idea to turn a monologue I'd written for her into a short film. And she introduced me to Rebecca. And then we ended up going on to make the short film, which was called Pretty Bitch, which I wrote and Rebecca directed, and did really, really well on the festival circuit. And I also picked up an award as well. So I really like working with Rebecca as a female director, because my experience thus far, it wasn't an extensive experience, like I hadn't done lots of work before. I'd worked previously with a male director who had lots of conversations with me, said all the right things. And then when I actually saw the play he directed, it felt like somebody else wrote it. I didn't know whose play that was at all. So working with Rebecca was great because she saw things in my work that I'd subconsciously put in there, and she listened and she got it. And then when I saw Pretty Bitch, I was moved by it. I felt she built upon what I had created, which is what all writers want from their director. So, we worked on a couple of other things together. And then a good friend of mine is an independent artist, and she was making a music video. And she was like, "I'd really like you to be involved." And I said, "Great, as long as Rebecca's involved." So then Rebecca and I worked on a music video, which we made for an artist called Charlene Monique. And while working on that, we started talking about setting up a production company. And that's kind of how MsMono was born.
Amazing. That's quite a lovely transition also from being a theatre writer, somebody who's thought plays are available to me. I think that's how I was as an actress. I was quite happy doing theatre, but the minute I did a part in a television show or in a film, I was like, oh, this is kind of a bit even more exciting than theatre. Are you still writing for theatre, or you've gone to the dark side, the light side? I call it the light side because we use so much light.
I'm definitely focused more on TV than I am theatre. So I tried a bit as a playwright, but I just didn't get very far. So I got longlisted for a couple of awards, produced a few short plays, but it never really kind of switched over to a company wanting to make something that I'd written. And then also the ideas that I were having, I felt they just fit TV more. Also, I consume hours of TV, so I'm always watching a TV drama. I can watch a minimum of 5 hours of TV a day, especially in lockdown. Like, I love TV. So, yeah, I just feel the ideas I have and my voice and what I want to say is better suited to TV. And we're living in this golden age of TV now that everybody keeps talking about. So if I'm not going to try and make it now, then when am I going to? So that's, yeah.
Is it because you feel too shackled by the idea that, I have to fit this whole story into 90 minutes or 2 hours? And and the idea of television is you can write a pilot and you can, I like to think of it as creating these characters and winding them up and setting them off around the world that you've created. And then I actually don't know what's going to happen to them in episode 3. I better keep writing and see how it turns out.
Definitely. Like, you can tell far greater stories in TV, and your characters can be much more detailed. And I think also I love the fact that TV reaches people in their own homes or on their phones, on the train. Like, it's so much more everybody has a TV. Like everybody in some way, shape or form either has a TV or watches TV in a way
Or
that
can watch on
theatre
their
doesn't.
computer.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I think theatre is still seen as for certain types of people, not everyone. So I think equally, I just want my stories to reach more people. And I have found more success in TV than I have in theatre. So I'm just kind of following the path that's been set out before me.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And Rebecca, what about you? I've already heard that you had this magical meeting and it turned into a short film. Just like that, of course. No work involved. It was just that you waved the magic wand and all of a sudden there was a short film.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about, because you're a documentary filmmaker as well, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I love fiction and documentary. And that was back in 2012. I was doing more fiction at that point, and I loved Pretty Bitch because it was the kind of female character that you don't see on screen that often at that time. I think now things have changed a lot and really fast, but I just felt like, you know, she was a really complicated character and it was really interesting. So I was really happy to be part of that project. And yeah, since we've done lots of other projects, and then I've gone away and worked on a documentary feature, but it's a kind of hybrid documentary. So there is animation in it, there's archive, live action, and there's elements of sort of recreation.
What's the story? How is it amalgamating all of those media?
So it's called Point of Change. It's a surfing documentary story. So it's about these guys in the 1970s who found a perfect wave on a sort of paradise island. And, you know, that's like their holy grail. And then it's the story about the impact of that, both personally and for that island. So the personal stories are to do with malaria and people going missing and trying to keep it a secret and, you know, not being able to. And then the other side of it is also an ecological message about how, you know, this idea in finding paradise, we destroy it. So, yeah, just what we do and globalization and many other sort of impacts of that.
I'm always fascinated by documentary about the idea that they start with a story, two boys finding a wave in a beautiful place, and you're like, right, I'm going to make a film about that. And then you're not making a film about that at all. There's all these other elements that were unexpected that you couldn't have written or couldn't have calculated or planned.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, that's it, really. The truth is so much stranger than fiction, and you wouldn't probably believe it if I'd written it as a script. So, you know, that's why these interviews, you know, you start and you don't necessarily know where you're going to end up. And that's the joy of it, but also the sort of horrendous nightmare of it sometimes as well, because you're sort of in the middle of the story and you can't write yourself out of it. You know, you've got to wait to see what will unravel. This film actually took me 10 years from beginning to end. I didn't work only on this film that whole time, but I started it and I made a short film, and then I just kept gathering interviews and the story kept growing. So, yeah, it's been a really long journey.
And then over 10 years, you've got hours and hours and hours and hours of footage. That, I mean, where do you even begin? Do you keep files of, that was, you know, 2014, you know, when I was in such and such a place, and then that's changed. I mean, you have to be able to have such an amazing helicopter view of the story, which is constantly changing and building on.
Yeah, and you have to be really organized. I mean, there was a point where I wasn't, and then I had to get organized, you know, in order to give it to an editor to get them to help me to make sense of it. And also, when you're very close to it, it is hard to see the wood from the trees, you know. So that's why it was really good to get an editor on board and help me see my way through and map out the story. And
had you been editing it yourself up until that point? Had you made an assembly?
Yeah, I'd made an assembly, and I'd also, I had a couple of editors on it because we kind of ran out of money and we didn't know what we were going to do. So in between, I'd sort of edit again. And yeah, it was very much finding the story and, you know, then getting a bit lost again with it. It's hard when you are filming and you're doing everything on it. It's very hard to get that objective point of view sometimes.
Yes, yes. And you brought up the subject of money and finance. I certainly know that idea of like, we've got just enough money to shoot it. Let's shoot it. And then we can worry about post. And then you get into post, you don't have a penny. You have a friend who will, I actually made my amazing editor a producer. So I got him pregnant with the project. So at least we'd have something to show. And that wasn't the only reason. He has amazing qualities that he brought in addition to the project. But then you're like, well, we need music now. Nobody's going to write music for my film for free. Nobody's going to do the sound and then do all the deliverables. It just felt like this you climbed one mountain, which was to get it all in the can, and then there was this whole set of mountain ranges behind it of costs and lawyers and accountants and all of the stuff that you have to have, the prosaic stuff that's not sexy at all, and you have to find money to pay for that. Rebecca, how have you been? Have you done crowdfunding? Do you have private investors? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I've done both. I've done a Kickstarter, which I did for my short film, and we raised £20,000 that way. And then I've also managed to raise private finance, and that's just been through kind of hustling, really, and just like, figuring out who knows who, and trying to meet film investors and then persuading them to invest in the project.
Well, it sounds to me, though, that while you were talking about your documentary, there's an awful lot of these mysterious follow a story, not really knowing the ending documentary series on Netflix and the streamers, as well as the dramas and the stuff that really grips people. I know we watch a lot of these. They're either unsolved crime dramas or whatever, but they kind of hook you in because you really don't know what rabbit hole you're going to go down next. So I wish you luck with getting the finance for that, and maybe some interest from one of those people. So one thing I wanted to find out is if you ladies have any war stories about being on set where you had a particularly challenging moment and you've got, I don't know, 15 minutes left to get the last shot, and
gosh, many times.
Anything like that you want to share with me that
I think
that afterwards
the one that was
made you feel like a better filmmaker.
I was making a short film.
Rebecca, let's start with you.
Jack
Do you have something?
And it's about a guy with Down syndrome who wants to be like his hero James Bond, and we had all these action sequences. So we were at sea and the tide's coming in, and it's like we're meant to wrap in half an hour, and everything was going wrong. And at one point, we're moving the monitor and the camera out of the sea because the tide's coming in over the tripod legs. And I mean, it was just a moment of like capturing a really beautiful shot with the sunset, and it just worked really well. And even though it was like nearly a complete disaster, we kind of like just got away with it. And that was a really special moment. And I was quite young, and
it's one of those things. Whenever you see that shot, that moment in the film, you can't equate it to the whole of the film. You can only remember all of that pain and panic. And
yeah, absolutely.
Maybe you can. Maybe you get to a point where you've made the peace with yourself, where like, we got the shot. It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no, those memories always come back with that. But yeah, it was a great moment, and just, it gives you confidence when you do manage to nail those things, because you feel like, okay, I can do this. It didn't end in a total disaster. So yeah, that was fun.
Anything for you, Karla, that comes to mind?
So I haven't been on set, I think, as much as Rebecca has. I think a last short film we worked on, it was less of a everything happening kind of situation and more my own self-doubt. So there was definitely, I think, a morning on the last day where I think I was doubting my ability a little bit, and it took me a minute to kind of get myself out of that headspace. And then it turns out we had a really great day and ended up finishing early. So the day itself went really quite well compared to the other 2 days we've had before. But that was definitely more a personal, pull yourself together, you're here, you can do this kind of moment, rather than kind of external. So that's probably the only thing that I can think of.
Yes, I think I know exactly what you're talking about, especially if you've written the story. And here you are, you're what I call queen for the day, hopefully, because you've written it, you've raised the money, you've produced it, and you get to make all the decisions. And then there's this huge weight of responsibility of, well, I better have the courage of my convictions, and I better know what I'm doing today. And if it doesn't turn out right, it's going to all be my fault. And some of the times I experienced, because I was one of the least experienced people on the set, I'd had a lot of experience as an actress on the other side, but not as the director and the decider, that you get a lot of voices from all different departments going, well, you really should be doing it like this, or are you going to do it that way? Is that really how you're going to do it? Or it's going to be way too dangerous. We have to find another way, but not coming up with a solution for another way. And I wonder if maybe it was a little bit of that, Karla, of were there other people at play, or was it just your own inner critic going, what the hell are you doing
I think
here?
it was my own inner critic combined with maybe some inexperience. So this was the first kind of this size, so it wasn't one that I'd written. And there were lots more people on set, or lots of people on set, everyone looking to obviously you as a producer to have answers for everything that goes wrong. And I think it was just a moment of self-doubt and the inner critic getting way too loud. So I ended up calling my sister, who was super helpful, and she just reminded me of who I was and the fact that I could do this. And then after I had that chat with my sister, it was like something clicked in my head and I was ready to go. And as I said, the day ended up going really, really well. We finished early.
Can I have your sister's phone number as well? I love that. You phoned a friend. It was my sister. She talked me down, and then we
she's
just
great.
went ahead.
She just reminded me of who I was, and the fact that I was doubting my ability was a lie. Like, I could do this. She's like, you're here for a reason. You could do this. You put this whole thing together. The fact that because obviously as a producer, you've produced the whole thing. So this was like the last day we were filming, and I don't know where the self-doubt, well, actually no, I do know where the self-doubt came from, but that's a separate story. But she just, as I said, reminded me of who I was, and it was just great, because I called another friend and couldn't get hold of her. Then I called my sister particular because she's really good at this kind of thing. And then after I got off the phone, it was like, yeah, brilliant, I can do this. Come on, let's go. And I kind of was raring to go. And the day of all the three actually went the best. So yeah, it was.
That's a great story. I mean, talking about your family, are any of them? Did you grow up with siblings or parents who were creatives, performers, writers, anything? Where do you get it from? My mum's like, I don't know where she gets it from.
It's bizarre. So I have traits that are family traits that help me in this industry, i.e. determination, tenacity / stubbornness. That's definitely a family trait. My family has that. Yeah.
I like that. What do those say? Those three again?
Tenacity, determination, and stubbornness. Essentially, yeah.
Right, I'm writing those down.
And because that's really essential, I think, in this industry to keep on going. Because there are so many no's, there are so many setbacks, there are so many hurdles, there are so many pauses, there are so many opinions. So I definitely come from a family where we have quite a strong will, definitely a Williams family trait, and a belief in ourselves, whether we're right or wrong. There's definitely, in the sense of once we've got our head around something, we're going to do it. So that definitely helped me in this industry. But with regards to being creative, no one. I think I'm the only one. And I've just always loved stories since I was a little girl. So our mum used to play us. So rather than read us stories, she was quite a busy mum. She used to play us cassette tapes, and I just used to love hearing these cassette tapes before we would go to bed. And then growing up as a teenager, I was the annoying friend that wanted every single detail of a story from the night before, and I would pause people and be like, no, how did you get from the car to the flat? Like, what happened? And I've just, always really, really loved stories. As I said, I watch TV, like I love watching dramas, and I love how a story, one, can transport you, but also get you thinking in the shoes of someone who's completely different to you, and empathizing with someone who you would never think you have anything in common with. But a great story can make you kind of feel what they're feeling, despite the fact you come from completely different backgrounds. So it was just that love and passion that are how I ended up here. But family, not at all. So my dad's an electrician and he was a pastor. My mum was like a stay-at-home mum for a while. and then she worked as a dinner lady, which was quite comical. There's one's like a me, and I've got an uncle and a gran, but literally no one is creative. I'm the only one in my family.
That's great. That's fantastic. I just got an entire family photograph of you all. Your dad with his screwdriver, your mum with her with her dinner lady costume on. I don't mean that's amazing. It's a very diverse family, and probably some characters in there you could turn into films one day.
I already am. Maybe I should say that. Yeah, but yeah.
Excellent.
Take a lot of inspiration from the people around me. Let's just leave it there. Yeah.
It's fantastic. What have been some of the television shows you've been watching during lockdown? What could you just not put down?
The morning show, even though that wasn't during lockdown, that was before. I absolutely adored the morning show. Like, I love its take on the Me Too movement from a variety of different angles. And I love the fact that it's complicated and funny and nuanced and entertaining. It's just brilliant.
And that nobody's getting away with anything. That nobody's completely innocent.
At all. And I also watched, I think this was during lockdown, Dave, which is a comedy drama series written by a guy called Dave Bird. So it's basically he's this kind of white, curly-haired Jewish guy who's trying to make it as a rapper. And he's actually very good as a rapper. And his USP is the fact that he has quite a small, deformed penis. So his name is Little Dicky, and he makes songs about his penis and the problems he's had with his penis. But it's all really tongue-in-cheek. So he's a really intelligent guy, but the series itself looks at Dave versus Little Dicky, because he's got this kind of hard hip-hop image. But the real guy is quite geeky and, like, has always got some sort of nasal infection. And is not as popular as the person he makes himself out to be.
Where is this
It's
show?
an American show. No, it's on BBC. It's on BBC.
On
So it's an FX show, but it's on BBC iPlayer, which is where I watched it. But it also tackles, that's the comedy side of it, but it also looks at stuff like misappropriation of black culture, because obviously this white guy trying to make a way in a black-dominated industry of hip-hop. It looks at male mental health. It looks at male vulnerability. So it tackles a number of things. And I just absolutely love it for what it does. So it makes you laugh and it makes you think at the same time. I loved it so much I actually finished all 10 episodes and then watched them again pretty much straight after. So that's another show that I've been watching. I watched The Teacher, which is another FX show, which is about a teacher who has an affair with a student and the kind of consequences of that. What else have I been watching? I watched Bates Motel again, which is quite old, but I rewatched it in lockdown. I've also been watching.
I've been rewatching a lot of stuff, and because I realise how much really good drama, you get so used to it being so good that you don't watch it properly. I don't know. I'm just sort of making this up on the spot. It's like I want to go back to it, like reading a good book. It's like, reading, I don't know, Thomas Hardy a second time, or watching another adaptation of Anna Karenina. You know all the characters and how they end, but you want to reabsorb yourself in the drama. And I think as writers too, second time around, I pay more attention to the dialogue, and I pay more attention to even more attention to the subplot and the smaller characters. If I'm talking about something like early Peaky Blinders, or I've just finished Succession,
I love that. Oh my gosh, I love that.
Oh, I'm gagging for the third series. I'm like, what? And they've been slowed down because of lockdown, but they're back in production, and I'm so happy. And they're just all of these disgusting people. But somehow I take this guilty pleasure in seeing who's going to get it in the neck next from Brian Cox's character.
I love Succession. It's such a great show. And as a writer, it does so much in such a unique and entertaining and funny way. So it's definitely a show that I have on the list of stuff that I take inspiration from. Because I also watched Pose again, which I thought was brilliant. The Bold Type I watched as well, which I really enjoyed, and I can't wait for the next season of that to come out, which apparently they've just finished shooting. I also watched British TV too, which I should pop in there because all the shows I mentioned are all American. So I'm I've watched some really good British stuff too. So probably the last thing I watched was called Too Close, which was on ITV. And it was kind of a psychological drama between a psychologist and a patient, both female. And the patient had driven herself, her daughter, and her daughter's friend off a bridge in the middle of the night into like the coldest of waters. And everybody thought she was this crazy woman. And like nobody can understand why she would do such a thing. They thought she had some sort of mental health issue, or she was just an evil woman, whatever it was. So it's a 3-parter, and it essentially looks at why she did it, but also it's a very really good cat and mouse between her and the psychologist, because the psychologist herself has secrets that she hasn't revealed either. So it's really great, these two brilliant actresses kind of figuring each other out while also telling a bigger story. So that was Too Close on ITV, which I also really, really enjoyed. And that's probably, I watched that a couple of weeks ago.
I'm getting some good recommendations here. Rebecca, what have you been watching that's made you go, oh, I wish I'd written that?
Oh my goodness, there's been so much amazing TV. I also loved The Morning Show. I thought that was brilliant. Call My Agent.
Oh yeah, I watched that too.
Oh, that's the French. Is that the French show? Yes, that's been recommended to me so many times because all my actor friends are like, "Oh my gosh, that's us. That's what we're like. We're horrible. We're dreadful. We're so self-absorbed." You know, hard being an actor when you're working because you've got everything you want. And now you're working and it's hard, and hard when you're not working because. And isn't there's an expression like, how do you make an actor unhappy? You give him a job.
I've not heard that one before.
Well, because they always have something to moan about. We always have something to moan about. And I really enjoy it even more. But I still have things to moan about. I think it's just hard. I think, that expression, if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it. But it really is one of the more challenging aspects of the film and television industry. What else, Rebecca? Can you think of anything else you've been watching?
I'm just trying to think. I mean, I loved The Tiger King and Don't Fuck with Cats for more like documentary style stuff. They were pretty brilliant.
I love that ending at Don't Fuck with Cats when she says, he was the problem, but aren't we the problem too? Because we're utterly obsessed with watching this man who clearly had major issues with everything in his life. We're watching him and we want to catch him, but now we're making a film about it, and you're all watching it too. Where does the cycle end? It's an end. I mean, do you feel that as a documentary filmmaker, sometimes you're literally shining a light and a lens on this world that's not familiar to a lot of people, and sometimes it's cracking open a door to...
Yeah, definitely. And I feel that responsibility as well, I'm sort of saying, look at what these people did. And then it's like, I'm pretty much doing that myself. So, it's kind of a hypocrisy, I guess. Yeah, it's very interesting. You definitely kind of do that because of the voyeuristic nature of documenting anything, really.
When you started making documentaries, did you go to film school, or did you just pick up a camera and start filming your family and turning, Christmas dinners into some kind of drama that wasn't there but kind of was under the surface?
Well, we did have a video camera, which we borrowed from my uncle, and we've got some hilarious home videos, but I wasn't really, I hadn't really clicked that you could do that. I went to uni to study to be a lawyer, and I fell in love with making films. It was in Liverpool. They were making loads of films there at the time. Me and my friends could go and be on set for a day and earn £100 a day being an extra in these films like 51st State and, all these films that were being made there at the time. We were like, this is great. And I just fell in love with that thing of being on set. So I started off as a runner and then script supervisor, and just kept working on set, really. and never looked back. But then I did do some short courses. I went to London Film School and I did a course in Sydney Uni, and I also did a year of media techniques at the WFA in Manchester, which is the Workers' Film Association. It was like a GNVQ in everything from sound, radio, TV, camera, editing. And that was really practical. And actually that was great because I finally learnt some skills that would help me in actually directing and producing. So, but yeah, worked in London, produced a lot of music videos and worked for Pulse Films for a bit. And then I just really wanted to make my own stuff. So I would just do a bit of work and then I would kind of fund my next project. And it just went like that for years, really.
And here you are, still going at it. You haven't you haven't been put off. Yeah, yes. The reason I ask about training too is because I feel like there's an awful lot of, like you did, a lot of on-the-job training that doesn't come from any school. Nobody's going to teach you initiative and stubbornness and, and just get it done about 10 minutes ago or yesterday if possible. And we only have 15 minutes left. There's no substitute for that, that buzz and that, what I call the ticking clock, the ticking time bomb. It's going that way to the end of the day. And some people, it's hard to decide to go to film school and come out of university with a huge amount of debt, which maybe you could have spent the same amount of money making a couple of short films and already be on the film festival circuit and meeting people. It's that delicate balance, I think, of getting as much information and training as you can, and
yeah, absolutely,
and just going out there and doing it.
Now I tutor at the London Met Film School. I'm seeing, how great it is to have tutors to sort of tutor you and coach you through it. But at the end of the day, they've still got to make the films, and it is always still about that thing of just like how prepared you are and how much you put into it and how willing you are to work really, really hard to make it as good as you possibly can, and some of those things, I think you've either got that and you kind of get it and you want it hard enough, or you don't. I think it's kind of like that.
Yes. Which is a self-culling system where if you don't have if you don't have the chops for the hours and the pressure and seeing something through to the end, the leaders of the group, of the pack, will sort of come out quite quickly just on their own.
But it is also, obviously, I would also say that I think it is something. The film industry does alienate people who cannot afford to be comfortable while they're doing all those things. So I think it's also important to recognise that, because sometimes it's not that people wouldn't necessarily have the talent, but they do actually have to go and work at a proper job and pay their rent.
Yes.
And, I've always been quite lucky that I've landed on my feet with part-time jobs or things that have kind of helped me through. And, but I do recognise my privilege in the sense that I feel very lucky that I've been able to do this, because I think it's not an easy path to take.
That's a really good point. Yes, and I think as you were talking, all the day jobs that I have done, the ubiquitous waiting tables and telemarketing. Back in the 80s, I was an aerobics teacher. I didn't want to be an aerobics teacher.
The things you'll do.
Yeah, and they're all part-time and they're sort of minimum wage, so that if something does come along, you can quit or you can go back to it when you've it's there is that preparation of being really good at lots of things. And if you can somehow do a day job that's also connected to what you want to do, that helps a little bit. Karla, have you had to do any sort of survival jobs that you look forward to not having to do in the future?
Yeah, definitely. So I was really quite fortunate. So I worked full-time until 2015. And then I was made redundant from a job I had at the National Theatre and decided now's the time to pursue a career as a writer. And if I'm not going to do it now, when am I going to do it? So during that time, I was really fortunate to work with an organisation, which is also my church, HTB Church in London, who have quite a large head office and are always looking for people. So I just temped there about 5 different times over like a 5-year period, from anything from 6 weeks to like 4-month contracts. And it was really great because every time I would kind of like run out of money, I could call someone in HR and they'd be like, oh yeah, we've got a job for you here, come in for a bit. Everyone knew I was a writer. Everyone knew I wasn't here for a long time. At the end of each placement, I was like, bye to everyone, really hoping I wouldn't have to come back. And then I had to come back like 4 more times. So I've definitely had to do that. But I would say I definitely picked up some skills from doing that help me now. So I was an executive assistant to a CEO of a charity when I was there. And he had the busiest diary, was a really busy man, always traveling, had like probably one of the highest profile people in the building. And being his assistant really helped me for being super organized, managing diaries, emails, all the kind of admin stuff that you need when running a production company. I definitely developed my skills from working quite closely with him. And also just the way he approached his position. Because as I said, he was quite high up. Everyone like across the globe in the building always wanted his time. And how he managed that. So I definitely learned a bit from doing these temp jobs, which is now 100% helping me now. Plus, the more people you meet in life, the more characters you have kind of in the bank. So that's kind of how I see it as well. Definitely lots of scenarios and people for me to kind of draw inspiration from when I'm working on my own stuff. So it's all really useful.
Yes. It's that no meeting is not a meeting because, it might pay off years down the line. My own right now. And the minute he came on board, there was a lot of language from story and from character that we had from all those years training together. Well, listen, I am so grateful to the two of you for coming along and telling your stories, which are different and similar and connected and all of that stuff. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I do hope, I'm going to say this to everybody, I hope that you'll come back.
I'd love that. Yeah, that would be great. Thanks. I'd love to come back on.
When your documentary's out there, Rebecca and Karla, when you're going into production with your TV series, I want you to come back and we can talk more about these projects because I think they're all evolving, we're all growing, and we need to share this information and support each other. It's very important to me. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Fierce Female Filmmakers is a production of Artemisia's Daughters. For more information, go to artemisiasdaughters.org. Our theme tune is composed by Charlie Mackey.